Now we've come about halfway through this assignment, and we really do need to save our progress because right now this document is kind of existing in no man's land. If we ran into a problem like a power outage or Photoshop shutting down unexpectedly, we would lose our progress. So let's save this file. Go up to File and choose Save. You can also do Command S if you like that shortcut. Now this window, the Save As window, will pop up. It's quite likely on yours that it will be collapsed. The first time you come to it, it usually is. You can do the expanded version, which I recommend, by clicking this little down arrow that's by the Save As dialog. That way you can navigate to wherever you've chosen to save your files. I'm going to do this one as typography. In a typography folder. And if you're one of my students, please follow the naming convention. And the other thing to know is it is a .psd file. So anytime a file has that at the end, it means that it is a Photoshop file with layers. And you can see down here in the bottom, we've got it set to being a Photoshop file. In fact, if I changed this to something else, you'd see that three-letter extension at the end change. Remember when we talked about in the very first pre-class prep stuff, if you change the extension on the end of a file name, it'll change where it wants to open it up and how it wants to open up. So we want it to be a Photoshop file, and leave the layers box checked and click Save. Alrighty, so we're all saved and safe and sound. So right now, if this crashed, I would be able to go and open that and continue on right from where I was. Zooming in just a little bit, let's talk about font style. So here I've got my type selected. I'm going to begin typing something else. I'm going to say, my day has been great, and hit enter to end. Now this typed in Lucida handwriting because that was actually the last font I used, since I actually did a couple things between the last little tutorial that I recorded in this one. But this brings up a great point. I can show you where tracking and kerning really comes in handy. So I'm going to zoom in just a tiny bit by hitting Command plus and then hold down spacebar to pan over. Now it's a little subtle, so I'm going to exaggerate it for you. Often when we type and have a scripty font, it might come in and you can see that the D, A, they're not connecting up together like a script font should. That's a good example of when we would need to adjust the tracking. So I'm on this layer. I don't actually need to have anything highlighted because I'm going to adjust the whole layer at once, and I'm going to come to my tracking, and I can either affect it here. So I'm going to just choose a smaller and smaller increment till it comes down to something that I like. Or I can click in this, hit Command A to select everything, hold Option and click my left arrow button, which will track everything just a little closer together. When I've reached where I can't see those little bumps, everything's connected well, I'm going to hit Enter to finish it. Now font style, we tend to change fonts quite frequently, so this is a good thing to take a look at. You can change the font of the entire type by coming up to the font picker in either the control box or over here in the characters panel. You can click on the little down drop, which will give you an example as you scroll through of what it looks like, which is great, but it still doesn't really help me know what my bit of type is going to look like. The easiest way for me to pick a new font is actually to highlight inside of this font picker and then use my up and down arrows to scroll through these fonts. Once I've found one that sparks my interest, I'm going to finalize my font selection by hitting Enter. And that is font style. Scrolling down a little more, let's take a look at font size. I'm going to duplicate this layer, not the same way that we've done the other ones, but I'm going to actually hold down Command, which will bring me my Move tool, and Option together. So Command and Option together will bring me this little icon. I can see it here on my cursor. That is a black and white double arrow. That means that whenever I click and move something, it's going to duplicate it. So instead of doing this over here, I'm going to click and drag this layer that I'm on, and it will make a duplicate. And when I let go, if you watch my layers box, it will create one that's called the same name but has copy at the end, so I know that that's a copy. As far as font size goes, we can obviously come to either of these boxes, either in our character panel or up here at the top, and hand type something in. But again, I'm a visual person, so guessing at what number isn't the best thing a lot of the time. A lot of the time I just like to see it get bigger or smaller. So I'm going to grab my type tool and click and drag to highlight all of this type. And then if I hold down Command and Shift and push my period or comma key, so those are the left and right caret keys, greater, lesser, you can affect the size of your font. Of course, you can always come up here and just type it in if you know, for example, I want it to be size 11 and hit enter, and that will change it. All right, we are almost to the bottom. Let's try just a couple more things. Let's duplicate this again. Try this quick trick one more time. So I have my type tool. I'm going to hold down Command and Option together, and then I can click and drag to make a copy. And then I can change this one to have different colors. Now at the very beginning of this section of tutorials, we did show you where the font color selector box is, and again the same thing over here. So I could click on this and choose a new color for the entire font, or I'm sorry, the entire piece of type. I'm going to click OK. What if I don't want to change the entire bit of type? What I can actually do is highlight just one word, come in and pick a new color. Now you'll notice as soon as I clicked on the color picker, that little bit of highlight disappeared. That's so I can see what the actual color is. Otherwise it would be some sort of weird inverted color. So that's how you would change just one word out of a sentence or out of a block of text to be a different color. So click OK. Great. Now I'm back to still active text. It hasn't been finalized. So again, I'm going to finalize it by hitting Enter, or you can click on the Move tool or Command Return. We are almost done here. Okay, paragraph. Remember how I said with point and click type that it will just run on forever and it won't recognize the edge of the page? That can become very troublesome if I am constantly reformatting my text and it doesn't automatically resize to fit the width of the page. The way to work around that is to, instead of click and point, is to click, hold down your mouse key and drag to create a box. And then when you are typing, in fact, that's a huge box. I'm going to resize it by hovering over that bottom corner and resizing it. All right, let's see. This is filler copy and will be replaced later. And then, okay, there you go. You see how that changed and it went down to its own, to a new line. I'm just doing the, universal blah, 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 blah talk here, period. To finalize, again, we push enter. I can change how this reformats when or this will reformat automatically, I should say, if I click on it to make it active and then click and drag any of these corners. So every time I let go, you can see that it's automatically resizing. It's even automatically hyphenating words. You can change that if you don't want it to hyphenate by up here in your paragraph choosing hyphenate and unclicking that. That way it'll just take the whole word and drop it down. Do you remember the whole letting thing? If I wanted these two to be closer together, I could highlight them, hold Option, and push the up or down arrow key. Up to make them closer, down to make it further away. Kind of a last final thing, we will run into this again. You notice how I got tired of typing and this was just filler copy anyway. I didn't have really anything to say. Sometimes when we're working on informational graphics, there'll be a chunk of text that we need to work around. We know we're going to get given at some point maybe some marketing copy or just a blurb about somebody, but we don't yet have that blurb, but we need to remember there's type there. What's really useful in that case, and I'm going to delete this layer by just hitting delete. when nothing was selected, and creating a new paragraph text box by clicking and dragging. And then instead of typing, I'm going to come up to type and down to the bottom where it says paste Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum is just gobbledygook Latin looking words that will fill up an area so that you don't have to come up with kind of filler copy. Also, if you ever spell check, it will find everything to be wrong, so you can't go past something without spell checking it. Speaking of spell check, let's see how to do that real quick. So right now, no text is active. If I have my text tool and right click, one of my options will be check spelling. You can also see there is a find and replace text option. When you choose either one of these, in fact, yeah, let's do check spelling. It will pop to the first word and you get your usual spell check box that you've seen probably in a lot of other places. So it'll give you the option to ignore something and move on to the next word. Also, when it is done checking through a single box, it will move on to the next text layer. Now in this case, I've got some Lorem Ipsum. I know my spell check is going to catch it every single time. What if I don't want to wait for it to go through all of my boxes? So for example, let's do this. If I'm on a different layer and I start spell checking, usually it'll start with that layer. Oh, you know what? I lied. That might have been an older version. Ignore that. I'm going to say done. Let's say I wanted to check a specific word. So to check a specific word without making it check through my whole document, I can use my type tool to click and drag to select a word and then right click and choose check spelling. It's getting a little late at night. I'm starting to mix my word up. Obviously it was spelled correctly. It says spell check is complete, so I'm going to say OK. This is one that I might not tell it to not show me again, so I'm not going to click that box. I'm just going to say OK and push enter to finish zooming back. So we have successfully gone through and filled in an example of each one of these bits of text. What we need to do now is save our progress, so we can hit Command S or just go to File and Save. It won't ask us where we want to save this because it's already saved the file there, and now it's just saving the progress. But what we also need to do, if you're one of my students for this assignment, is to create a JPEG version, because what I want you to hand in to me is not this version with all of its layers. This tends to get to be a fairly large file. What I want from you is just a JPEG. So let's go up to File and choose Save As. So anytime you have a file, you've already saved it one way, and you want to actually save a copy of it, maybe in a different format, go to Save As. The first thing I want to do is change the format, and in this case we're just going to change it to JPEG. So JPEG is pronounced JPEG. Let's not do the 2001, we'll get to that later. Just choose JPEG. It will automatically uncheck layers, so I know that there won't be any layers saved. And I'm going to hit save. So you can see it changed the JPEG up here. Here's our options that it will give us anytime we want to save a JPEG. For this class, you don't need to worry about any of these except changing the quality up to 12 and then clicking OK. Great, so now that's done. Now if I actually save it one more time, because this is my PSD, I don't want to accidentally close out of it and lose any progress, and then I can close out of this window by either hitting Command W or go to File and Close. Now if I wanted to come to my Finder to see where I saved these files, you know what? I don't actually remember where I saved these files. But I could come to my Finder and find those files and double check that they were okay. Alrighty, I feel like you've gotten a pretty good introduction to your type tool. Let's move on to the final assignment.